Hello everyone, I'm Antonio Sandu, PhD professor in Stefan the Great University from Suceava, Romania, Faculty of Law and Public Administration. Today we will present the paper called Dilemma Ethic Training for Higher Education. Paper presenting in the project called Suport instituțional pentru creșterea calității actului didactic universitar în contextul pandemiei, prin consiliere psihopedagogică, etică și promovarea unui stil de viață sănătos. The project has been implemented by Stefan cel Mare University from Suceava with financial support from FDI 2021. This project discusses about how to promote ethics and counseling of ethics to the students in BA, master and doctoral degrees in our university, but also could be reproduced in any other higher education institution that implement ethical programs. A central element in educational discourse on ethics is the presentation of a model for solving the ethical dilemma that students or teachers are facing in their academic activity. The ethical dilemma is a situation in which the subject must calibrate his moral behavior based on a choice between two sets of ethical or moral values of equal importance for the subject, but divergent between them. We encounter such situation when, for example, value of fairness and justice versus compassion and care are competing. One of the examples that we receive in our trainings, in doing our ethical trainings, was when we as a teacher have to choose to validate the presence of a student. If we do not validate, they may lose, for example, their bourse. But if we validate, we reach the righteousness, because that student was not present in that moment in the class. So there was a difference between academic values and righteousness values to be moral integer, and our inner compassionate, that we see our students need their university stipenda, and they need to take this scholarship. And of course we have to choose what is right, but anyway we had a dilemma and we should choose between those values. We most of the time we notice imperialism, axiological imperialism of public values that overcome our own values, most of all when we work from home, for instance, and there is a transparency between what from what is private life, and we notice an invasion of private life from value that come from public ethics. Our private life is transformed more and more in public, is transferred in the public domain, and a virtualization of relationships and reality is made so more and more strong. Not only because we move our activity in online from 2 years, but also because we use more and more information technology, and we integrate this in our lives even previously those current events. So a first model of ethical dilemma training is a multi-stage approach that we personally adapt from a model from Carl Rogers of non-directive counseling, and we create a model that we call ethical counseling or counseling of ethics, and our paper where we discuss about this was della dilemma morale personale alla dilemma etica, counseling of ethics, from personal moral dilemma to ethical dilemma, and this was registered and accessible online on YouTube, and you can find it on YouTube on youtube.com/c/cursore online Antonio Sandu. It's the name of the whole channel, but you have a playlist that called ethical counseling, and could be find there this paper. Also another paper that is also available online in a registered form is counseling of ethics, focus on solving ethical dilemma, that could be accessed online at the same YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/cursore online Antonio Sandu. So this model proposes a multi-stage approach, and we choose to explore alternative, to explore first of all what the significance of dilemma is, what are the significance of ethical problems, and how we can deal with it, and how the subject, if the subject is not ourselves, deal or could deal with this problem, exploring alternative solution, and establish a plan to solve the dilemma, and implementing this plan. So this was one model we teach them to the students in a course called Ethics and Integrity in Academics. And another model that's close, very similar with one presented by us, and we discuss today, is starting from the work of Lou Marinov and Henk van Luik, that aims to solve ethical dilemma by following a series of 7 steps as follow. What is the moral core issue? Who are the parties involved? Who is or are morally responsible? What, if any, further information do we need? What argument can be brought forward? What is my or our conclusion? And how do I feel about this conclusion? Let's discuss such of these steps one by one, and understand these steps. So first steps is what is the moral core issue? When we say at this regards of opinions between 2 persons, sometimes there are a moral problem. For instance, in education, the plagiarism is a moral problem. Not only moral, but legal problem too. Moral dilemma appear when 2 concurrent value with equal importance for people could be used to solve this problem, and both of them are legal. So plagiarism is not a dilemma, because to plagiate is not really allowed by law. So if we are in the front of a plagiarism, then we should penalize the students that commit plagiarism. But and also the dilemma that we start with, we do not cheat on, say, one student is present, but he or she are not, because it is cheating. But the moral problem is not only the cheating, because the cheating is our own choice, and we are morally responsible. That's the step 3 for cheating. But also the moral issue could be inequity, lack of equality, lack of equity, because if a student receives a scholarship, then other students could not receive, because the number of scholarships are limited, and it could be given only one number of the students, and in order of the degree they obtain at the end of the semester. And if in such university case, if they are present at the number of the classes, a minimum number of the classes. So if a student does not attend the minimum number of the classes, he or she may lose scholarship, but the next student in the line will take it. So we make inequity toward the student that are on the next position, and he or she could become eligible for scholarship, but it's not because our lack of maintain righteousness. So moral core issue is not only one, it could be more than one problems, and we in order to good solving the dilemma, we have to choose what is the most important, or what is the core issue in this moral dilemma. The second, what are the parties involved? Almost never there are only one or two parts that are very good to. There is no only one or two parts involved. Sometimes between this dilemma could be the students that are not present, but the teacher agreed to mark him as present because otherwise he loses the scholarship. The teacher that break his or her duty to righteousness, but also the colleague of the student that could lose the chance to win the scholarship, and the other colleagues from the class, because they see the righteousness could be broken, and they have a bad moral example. But sometimes, as I say, we have our own values, such as the values come from religious beliefs, that we have to do good, and we perceive, for instance, that we do good for the student, that he's not losing scholarship, so we tend to breach our obligation to be impartial. But this conflict between our own values and public values could be easily solved if we understand that there is not only one direction that is influenced, the student that loses his or her scholarship, but also the other student that could win that scholarship, and they're then morally wrong could be made by doing action, by action, or by not action, by not take action. So this is important when we have a practical reason for a moral dilemma. We say about who's moral responsible, and we say, well, in this case, it's the responsibility of the teacher. But is it so? We have our own values, but these values are coming from tradition, coming from our socialization process. So the society in the whole is sometimes responsible, indirect responsible for ethical breach. Well, when we see that it's an ethical commandment to renounce of promote our relatives in social position if we are a public servant, for instance, and it's called nepotism. But from history, from 100 years of history, we see that relatives inherit the social position. For instance, in aristocracy, or in Romanian society, even some administrative position were inherited in previous time. And nowadays, the society change the moral rules and the ethical rules and say equality of the chance. But the equality of the chance are not an historical value, ethical value. So the socialization process tends to be more close to a tribal approach when we say it's mine, is my kind, is my relative, is my tribe, and we promote them. And even today, some social positions are inherited. For instance, in constitutional monarchies, when the title of monarch is inherited, or a nobiliary title, but it's a social position rather than administrative, except the fact that kings are the head of the state. So in practical reason, we have to understand why it's more important and for whom is more important to be to respect the equality of the chance, and not to follow the old rules of the old morality, tribal morality, and to say to think about whole society, not only our own family or own relatives. Because when we think about Christian ethics, Jesus Christ says, love your neighbor. So if love your neighbor is your relative, because your relative is your immediate neighbor, then we can understand, say, oh, our close neighbor should be, or relative should be our responsibility. But today, in institutional ethics or in public ethics, we tend to have a responsibility toward the global, or the global society. And it's because our human capacity to make bad things, bad choice, that are influenced whole society, whole earth. For instance, ethical problems. Then we say, oh, we pollute, and the pollution influence not only us but whole society. And now we pollute on even the cosmic space. So these questions, who is morally responsible, should include not only the person that have to decide, or the immediate person in favor or in disregard of whom the decisions are made, but other persons, other stakeholders that could be involved. So we have to to try to understand what further information do we need in order to have a more acceptable decision on that dilemma. For instance, we can need information about other person involved, how their interests are, their interests are not respected in this practice, and so on. For instance, in the crisis period in 2020 in Romania, one person who drive a car was stopped by the police, and he take a fee from the policeman by breaching the speed limit, and he noticed and write in the paper that he needs to arrive in one city because he transport very important medical supplies with his own car, because there was not available other cars, for instance medical care cars, and he just make this medical transport with his own car. That was an emergency transport, and he has to reach the speed limit. He needs to save a life, and he could prove this in a court, and the court canceled the fine. So in sometimes even law could be broken if if an emergency is produced, and it saves lives, for instance. Of course, not every laws and not every times, but in this case that I already mentioned, a speed limit was breached, but it was not considered an incorrect behavior because of the purpose of the practice. And in other situation, in other in other case, it's Italian court of law that refused to sanction a person that steals food from food store, because he could prove that he needs to eat, and he has no financial to buy this food, and the court says the state failed to provide him the minimum that is necessary to sustain his own life, and he was obliged to steal in order to ensure his own life. So the next step is, what is our conclusion? What is the best decision or we have to take in order to solve the dilemma? On all these debates, we have to choose on one solution, and that solution could be our conclusion, our understanding of how to deal with this dilemma. But it's not the last step. The last step is how we feel with this conclusion, how I feel about this, and how we live with this conclusion. Is it important for us or not? Is it acceptable for us? If the conclusion is not acceptable, maybe we should try again and repeat those steps in order to reach a conclusion that is more acceptable for us, both in our public values and in our private own values, and we have to to deal with this values imperialism and to approach this dilemma in order to public values prevails, but we have to live with our decision, and in this way we have another method inspired by philosophical cafe, and it's also adapted by us for online and face-to-face teaching of ethics, and then we adapted it under the name of Virtual Philosophical Cafe, and it starts this practice. Not all Virtual Philosophical Cafe that we do starts in this way from analysis of film or books, but we do this a series of 5 philosophical cafe that starts from movies, from TV series or movies. There in these movies we present some ethical dilemma and moral presentation of pro and cons of very ethical sets of value. And in that problem we can focus on, for instance, the limit of acceptability of moral problems. And we give an example, the Romanian film Baccalaureate. And in this movie we see a person that are capable to cheat and to make his own daughter that suffered from recent rape to cheat on his on her exams, and he as a doctor accept to make bribe to the teachers from that are in the evaluation of in the committee of the evaluation of the thesis of her daughters. Her daughters does not accept and does not cheat, but but a person he didn't know. But this doctor does not accept to put one of his patients that are in a very acute and severe state to be put in the interrogatory by the police for his own fact, for his own guilty, but he say no, in his medical condition he cannot testify, and he does not accept even to let that person to testify. Even he was put in the situation where the police says, we know you tried to cheat about your daughter and her exams, and we will investigate you on this, you and your daughter on this subject, if you not let us take the statement from that felon, from that patient that could commit some crime, and he could be also a witness to the crime, and if he died because he's in a severe condition and could die, and if he died and does not testify, the police could not continue the investigation on other accomplices of that person. But the doctor has states that he has own limit on what is acceptable or not to do with a person, and to put a person in such situation that could put his life in danger. So that was a moral dilemma. What is the acceptability of a gesture? If he accept to cheat for his own daughter, he could not find acceptable to put in risk the life of his patient. Even this testimony could be important for prosecute a case. What is the limit of ethical obligation toward the patient for the doctor that overcome the social importance of his testimony, because life is in stake. Other movie that we present in this area was Matrix and the TV series The 100, and we discuss about the ethical acceptability of technologies. The ethical acceptability of technology also could provide the ethical dilemma. Do we trust in technology, in artificial intelligence, for instance, but could we place our life total in the hands of these machines, intelligent machines? And of course, some films, some movies or TV series describe a post-apocalyptic scenario where the machine took over control on our own lives and put all humanity in danger. Could it be possible or not? Do we have to have trust in technologies? Do we have to have trust in the science, and so on? Other such movie that we discussed in Philosophical Cafe was the TV series Suits, on the dilemma how a lawyer should be ethically involved in the case with his own values and his own practice put totally in the case, with moral and feelings involvement and in the case, or with moral detachment and only professional competence at the maximum, of course, but only with moral detachment. A lawyer should be involved in his own cases. Of course, if you are as a lawyer involved emotionally in the case, you could be more sympathetic with the case, with the people that you defend, but you could make mistakes, and a moral detachment could be perceived as not do your diligence to solve the case, but in other way you could be exactly because you are detached and you can see more solution of your case.